Well, obviously, thank you for being here at the Friars Club. First, I've read the book. I don't know how many interviews you're going to do, but this interview read the entire book. I loved it. I guess I've read every major book on Sinatra, and there were elements in this that were fascinating to me, that hearing for the first time. But first, I want to know, how did you work together? You had the story to tell. You put it down. Explain how you two worked together.
Well, we were both, obviously, I had known Frank through Dennis Stein, who was a longtime Friars Club member. And thank you for, Dennis, I'm sure would thank you for that. And that's how I met Frank and Barbara. And I met Eliot through Frank and Barbara. And we became friends with Maria, his wife. And when I moved down to Florida, we were in contact with each other and had dinner a couple of times. And we would sit around telling Sinatra stories, and I was like, Eliot, my God, you have to write a book. I mean, this is ridiculous. You have the best stories. He has such amazing stories, and they're all in there. And so we just started working on it about 12 years ago, and then we put it away and picked it back up.
So 12 years ago you actually started them. And Eliot, how about you? You know, many times when people dig back in their lives, you know, they churn up a lot of pain. When you talk about Rickles and Liza and some of the adversity with Frank, like duets, what was the experience like for you reliving this in a formal way with Jennifer to write the book?
Well, first of all, I had a lot of fun doing this.
Fun is important.
It was a pleasure, because Jennifer doesn't live too far from where I live, so we were able to make trips. My daughter would take me down to Jennifer's, and we'd spend a day writing, and we would then move on to the next chapters, and after that, there was a flow, and there was a rapport between the two of us that just started to make magic. And we had done this before, and we stopped doing it about 2 years after we initially started. We had outlined the whole book. We had written the duets chapter and a few other chapters, and Jennifer was able to work out a meeting with a publisher here in New York, and we took a plane. We came into New York all excited, and there was a room full of people from this company, and they said, we love your outline, we love the duets chapter, but tell us about the women.
Oh, they wanted to hear about the women. Yeah, it's Frank's
And I said, well, I started in 1977. He got married to Barbara in 1976, and I didn't see him with another lady, so I don't know what you're talking about. Well, you know all the stories. You heard all the stories.
Oh, they wanted to go back pre you.
No, yeah. Well, I said, yeah, I did. I heard all the stories, and I don't believe anything I hear and half of what I see. And this
Well,
meeting,
you have to experience it
and
yourself.
this meeting is over. And Jennifer and I walked out. We were disappointed, and we sort of put the book on the shelf for a while. And my daughter Carol found the publisher, and it's about a year ago, and we were off to the races again.
Good. Well, let's weave our way through some of the stories. We've had excellent background there on the screen. I was struck that when you were in the Metropolitan Correctional Facility, you were able to use the pay phone and book your acts while you were still in the clinker there. Tell us about how you pulled that one off.
How crazy a story.
He had a lot of dimes. This is before cell phones.
I guess it's called instinct and self-preservation. But when I walked into this unit and I looked around to see where the telephones were, there was one house phone which said 5 minutes once a day, and that wasn't going to work. And then I saw 2 payphones on the wall, and I said, wow, let me go over and see what those exchanges are.
Yeah. Oh, the exchanges, the numbers, yeah.
So I saw the exchanges, and I was able to put a dime in, and I was able to get my sister, who was here tonight, And I got her on the phone and I said, would you do me a favor and call my assistant, we still had a little office in Westchester, and ask her to get this exchange to ring up in Westchester.
Which was not an easy thing if you think back to the 1970s, right?
And, then you say, well, what good is that? Well, once I could put a dime in and get to Westchester, the next thing I did in Westchester was to get a call redirector so that the second call I made already had the number in Australia programmed in that I wanted to see. So for 20 cents, I got anywhere in the world.
That's fabulous. Now, from around that period of time, maybe a little bit before you went away, how long were you away, actually? 8?
Well, 7 months, I think, to the day.
7 months.
Yeah.
From around that early period, Jennifer, just set up the car phone story.
Oh, God.
This is a wild one.
So it's important to understand that the reason Eliot ended up in the MDCC
Yes.
in the first place was because the feds were after Sinatra, and he didn't
Because of that picture that
because
we
of the
see.
photo that you saw.
They wanted to include him somehow. Yeah.
Well,
you know-
excuse me, it was not only because of that photo. They had wiretaps. They had over 260 hours of wiretaps, which I heard every hour.
You think there was an album there in those ones?
There was a box set.
All right, go ahead, Jennifer.
But because they were after Sinatra and Eliot was not giving information that he didn't have, by the way.
Right.
They went after him in a big way, and he ends up in the Westchester Premier Theater with a guy by the name of Greg De Palma, who was giving
Connected.
profits and doing things like that. And when I said to Eliot when we're sitting here doing the interviews, and I said, well, when you found out he was skimming profits, why didn't you just say, go away, I'm out of here? And he said, well, because I remembered back a couple of years when he took me out to the Italian American Association
Civil Rights League.
Event on 250 acres, and there's all these, cars parked all over the grass. And he had, back in the 1970s, if you think back to the cars with was it a Coupe de Ville? Is that what you had? With a car phone in it. And not
The
a lot
early
of people had car
car
phones, right?
Yeah.
So it's got all the big antennas, coming out of the car. And somebody goes up to Greg, says something to him. Greg goes over to Eliot and says, I need you to do me a favor. Somebody's going to come over and take the phone out of your car. And Eliot's like, what? And he's like, no, I really need you to do this. And so I guess a couple of guys come over with
Crowbars.
proficiency.
No, it wasn't.
No,
Cobra.
they were like
these
experts.
were skilled mechanics.
They've worked on safes, you know.
It didn't take 20 minutes. I mean,
So
everything.
Columbo got your car phone.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So,
Now look,
so after that,
Yeah.
he came to the conclusion that maybe I don't want to mess with these
Got
guys,
it.
and
No,
maybe I
it's-
better just shut my mouth and.
now, and that's relatively early in the book, and there's really a poignant moment in the book. Years later, you're someplace in Europe, either France or Italy, and just you and Frank sitting there having a couple drinks, and Frank finally says to you, with regard to you're 7 months away in the Westchester Premier Theater and everything, so Eliot, what happened? What do you remember about feeling then and Frank's reaction to your answer?
Well, I need to back up a little bit
Yeah,
because
sure.
when I got through with the MCC in 1980, well, it was the end of 1981. The first concert that I went to cover Sinatra was in Pittsburgh in 1982, and I got the limo in the private part of the airport, and I knew the plane was coming in, and Frank used to get off the plane. He used to be the last one off. If Jilly was with him, Jilly would be first, and then Barbara and Vine, and then he would get off, and if there was a guest. And he came off the airplane that day, and I hadn't seen him since Westchester in 1976, but obviously he knew what was going on, and he just came down. He came off the plane first, and he went like this, "Thanks." And That was
That
it.
was that.
And we never talked about it. Never talked about it until I think it was 1989, we were in Scandinavia. And I never brought it up to him, and I wasn't about to, unless he wanted to talk about
Yeah,
it.
but he learned a lot about you in that brief conversation. You know, essentially how hard you had been working on his behalf while you were away. And
Well, there were a lot of things, obviously,
Yeah.
he didn't know when we did have that conversation. And he was sort of stunned, but he found out that I had done a lot of work that his lawyer took credit for, but at that point he was already parted from his lawyer, and he wanted to send me a whole bunch of money, and I said that I don't bother wasting your time, I'm not cashing the check.
Good. Very good, on both ends. So when we look at the book, The Way It Was, My Life with Frank Sinatra, one of the things that makes this book work so well is the stories of your dealing with adversity. Now, you may not have thought of it like that, but as I read the book, so I made a list of a few of these things I'd like just to run by the audience. And put yourself in Eliot's shoes. Let's go to the Meadowlands, because I myself was on the way to the Meadowlands for a concert. It was Liza opening, and Sinatra. You had a huge deal with American Express, private parties and everything. What happened?
We left the Waldorf, the boss and I. We got to the Meadowlands rather early. He hadn't sung in a week or so, so he wanted to do a thorough rehearsal. And when we got there, Hank Catania, he was the chief in charge of the stage, the sound, the lights. He came up to me and said, "We got a problem." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Somebody left the music in San Francisco." I said, "Are you kidding?"
The charts, the arrangements, everything. Yeah. Orchestrations.
Everything. I said, "You kidding me?" So I said, he says, "No." I says, "Well, then call Chicago or Miami." Because what I did was, I always try to stay ahead of the game and figure what could go wrong. And, planes could be delayed, or luggage could get lost. Or, not that those charts were ever checked; they were always carried. So I said to Hank, "Call Chicago, Miami or Atlanta. We got to have a set of charts there." I knew we had it in Chicago, and we couldn't get the people that we had the charts with, because I figured in 2 hours, the worst I could do is delay it an hour.
Yeah.
And we got there early enough, and I couldn't find the charts. At which point, the panic started to come with everybody. I went into Liza's dressing room, and she says, "Well, honey, I'll do the whole show by myself." I says, "I don't think so. I don't think you're going to do the whole show by yourself and expect to work with the boss again. I don't think that's a very healthy approach." She says, "Well, I'm going to call Fred Ebb." I says, "I don't care if you call God. You're not doing
You're
it."
not doing the show by yourself.
So I went back, and I'll never forget it. I went into the dressing room. I said, "Boss," I said, "we have a little problem." He says, "What's that?" No, I says, "The music was accidentally left in San Francisco." He says, "No problem." He says, "Tell the limo driver I'm coming out. I'm going back to the Waldorf. Tell Barbara to stay home, and we'll go for dinner in New York."
No problem.
I try to explain to him that this was not a good move with, American Express, Burson Marsteller. There was a lot of things riding on this night, which was sold out.
Yeah.
He didn't care. I said, "Well, how about trying to go?" I mean, these guys know the music. They're all your musicians. We don't have any strangers here. Why can't they? He says,
Just play it. Yeah.
He says, "You just don't understand, but I'll go and try." So I'm standing on the side of the stage and watching him go through the first song, and I knew by the body English this was not good. And when he got to the second song, he, in the middle of the store, put the microphone on the stool and walked down, and he said to me, "You go do the show. I'm out of here."
Now, stay with adversity for a while.
So now the fun started. What do I do? I have Burson Marstello with all their big shot clients. They had a special dinner, cocktail dinner, and drinks. And I figured, let me see what I could do if I could get Sunday night. We had Friday and Saturday night, but let me see if I can get Sunday night. So the first thing I did is found out who was supposed to be there Sunday night, got in touch with their management, made a very quick deal on the phone for them to blow out Sunday night for another night.
That's luck right there. Yeah.
Well, it was luck that they were willing to cooperate with us. And at least when the press made the announcement that he wasn't going to be there and why, we said that those tickets would be honored on Sunday night, and if anybody couldn't make it, we'd be very happy to refund the tickets.
And the media didn't believe him at first. They thought that he was lying.
Yes, I
As
remember the
Frank was
coverage
really
wasn't. The coverage really wasn't very fair. It was like they were somehow saying, "Why couldn't Frank do the show without the orchestrations?" It was evident that you can't do it. You can't do a show like that.
Anyway,
I remember that very well.
After I got that done, I went to the Burson Marstello cocktail party and told them that there was not going to be a show, but we'll do this whole thing over again Sunday night, and we've got that worked out. And for the most part, there was a little disappointment in the room, but not as much.
Yeah.
And then the next step was once I had that on this side, I was feeling pretty good about how this was going, and I went upstairs to see the press, and I was just waiting for them. And they says, "You're lying?" I says, "Who said that?" I says, "You're lying. He's sick." I says, "Is that why we're doing this show Sunday night and we're going to be here tomorrow night?" I says, "We're not lying. We left the music in San Francisco." And they didn't. The press didn't believe it, and no matter what I said, they didn't print it the right way.
You know, it's funny because I was headed to the Meadowlands with a couple of Sylvia Sims and some people in my car, and as I was driving up, I saw cars were leaving. I was like, something's weird here. And I got up, and a parking guy said, "Show is canceled, show is canceled." I turned around and got back. Then Sylvia found out what the reason was somehow. All right, let's stick with the adversity. There's an excellent story about you're dealing with Donald Trump. I mean, this is good. The quick setup was that the man who booked Frank and Sammy to play the Taj Mahal, Mr. Attest, had died, and now he was working for Trump.
No, Mark Edis is his name.
Mark had died. So now Trump was taking over what he had been doing and the contracts and take it from there.
Well, Mark Edis worked for Steve Wynn at the Golden Nugget, and he got the job with Donald Trump at what was going to be the new Taj Mahal. And he called me very excited. Eliot, I knew him and his family. He was a Gross singer, and I need all your acts. And I said, "Mark, when is this place could be delayed? I can't put all the acts in there, but let's talk about it." And this was like late July or beginning of August, and things moved in a hurry, and I got an invitation in the mail to go to his daughter's bas mitzvah, which was in New Jersey. Okay, it was in September, late August, early September, and my wife Maria and I went, and it was at not at the Taj Mahal, the Trump Plaza.
At the Trump Plaza.
And we got to the Trump Plaza, and there was nice tables over there, and there was a seat to the right of me that was empty. And it wasn't too long that Mr. Trump sat down. next to me, and he says, Eliot, we need all your acts. We need, Frank, Liza, Sammy, Stephen Eady, this, that. Yeah, okay. I says, Mark is working with me. He's trying to get him. I says, look, you don't know when you're going to open, and I'll work it out with Mark, but you're speeding a little bit until the place is open. We got to slow down. And I really never did for Mark because I was that close with Mark.
He had a good reputation.
Well, he was a good. He was a super guy, and I had given him Frank. I had given him Liza. I had given him Sammy, who both Frank and I knew weren't going to work, but we wanted a contract for him. He was dying, and we knew he would never sing again. And Paul Anka was thinking about possibly playing there. So there was 4 or 5 real possibilities, but he had Sinatra. And I was sitting in my office and watching the news, and comes across that there was a helicopter crash, and Mark was gone. And it was pretty tough. And Maria and I went back to New Jersey to the funeral, and Paul Anka was sitting next to me. He says, now you're going to learn what the art of the deal is. Huh. I says, what are you talking about? I says, we have all deal memos. Forget it. You're going to find out what the art of the deal is. So I went from the funeral. Maria and I went to Los Angeles, and I let a few days go by, and I tried to get Trump on the phone, and I couldn't get him on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I finally told his assistant I'll be there in his office at 9 o'clock. Tell him he better be there tomorrow.
You would jump on a plane to go someplace pretty quickly.
And my oldest son, who's here tonight, was in Florida. I told him to pack the suitcase up with all the deal memos and meet me at Trump. And we went up there, and we sat down, and he says, what's your problem? I says, my problem is that I did what I didn't want to do, is to give you most of the acts, and you have them for 3 times. 4, that's 12 shows for each one of them. And I really need to put this on paper. And he says, well, let's talk about Frank. He says, maybe 3 times is too much. Well, maybe if he comes 3 times, he doesn't have to do 4 shows. He can do 3 shows. And, I started to take the steam a little bit. I could feel I was getting a little excited. And I says, well, let's leave that on the side. What about Liza? Definitely not 3 times. She, maybe two times and maybe only 3 shows. And I said, what about Sammy? And he says, he's a dead man. He says, well, what do you care about that? I says, I don't care about him, but the boss cares about him, and he wants him to have the contract and take it to his grave with him. And he looked at me, at which point I said to him, what about Stephen Eady? He said, who are they? So I gently went over the table, and I had his tie. And if I choked him, I would have been out by now. But I didn't.
Right.
My son pulled me off him. And the best part of the story is we go down to the lobby in Trump Towers about 11:30 in the morning. And I said to Eric, I better call the boss. He says, why? I said, Trump's crazy. He's liable to call the press.
Yeah, good point.
And the old man will wake up in California, and he'll turn on the television. He'll hear his name and what's going on, and I didn't call him.
Good point.
So now it's only 8:30 in the morning in Palm Springs. I get Vine, who's his assistant. She says, who died? You calling here at 8:30 in the morning? You want me to wake him up? And nobody died? I says, do me a favor, Vine, I got a problem. So I waited for about 10 minutes, and he got on the phone, and he said, who died? I says, no, nobody died. but this is the problem. He says, no problem. You got two choices. You go upstairs and tell him to go fuck himself or give me the telephone number. I said, I got the message.
Wonderful story. Now, turn to Jennifer for a second. You knew Barbara and Frank. Were you aware of Frank's obsession with being on time before you got into this book?
No, I was not. No,
It was one of the-
I was aware of a few things about Frank. I knew he was a practical joker. He used to like to nudge me every now and then and go, watch this, you know, and harass people at the table and things like that. But no, I was not aware of his obsession about time. But he has so many fantastic stories.
Well, pick one for Eliot to tell. I mean,
Well,
there's the plane taking up.
My favorite was the one where he gets on the helicopter and somebody showed
All
up
right.
a few minutes late.
The helicopters. Because Sinatra really was obsessed with punctuality.
He was,
To the point of using the word correctly.
you're wasting my time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the helicopter story.
Well, Michelle Rickless was after me, you know, to have P as a door open for Sinatra, and it really never worked out.
No, it did not work. I saw that. It didn't work.
No, but it never really worked out with all the times he called until I figured out, well, maybe what she'll do is she'll open the show for 15 minutes, then I'll put Rickles in front of Sinatra
Yeah.
for a half hour, and then let Frank do the back end of the show. And maybe, and he said, hey, listen, you can have all my planes, the helicopters, and all this. And I went back to the boss and told him this. He says, it's a bad idea, son. He says, this is not good, but we'll do it, okay? And, you know, we had his Air Force, and so we saved a lot of money. but it really wasn't worth it. We were supposed to play Westbury, and we went to the heliport on the East River Drive and take the helicopter to Westbury. It's his helicopter. I didn't tell Frank's, you know, that it was his helicopter.
His husband's
Yeah,
helicopter.
okay, so we get there, and it's Frank and myself and Rickles, and we're on a plane, and Frank says, what are we waiting for? So I said to the guy, captain up in front, sitting in front of me, hey, you know, let's go. He says, you can't. He says, Rickles is coming with us. I says, Rickles is coming with us? Well, where is he? Well, he's on his way. At which point I told the boss, I says, this is Rickles' you know, one of his planes and helicopter, and he's going to be a little late. So he said, no, that's not good. Tell the guy, take off. No. He says, now, and he starts arguing with the pilot up in front. He says, listen, I wasn't sure whether he was carrying or not that night, but he was getting pretty hot. And I says, hey, listen, and Rickles shows up, and he's about 10 minutes late. He gets on a plane, and Sinatra reamed him out like I never
His
saw
own
him.
helicopter.
Yeah, I never. He says, don't ever do that again, because we're not waiting for you.
We take off without you.
Yeah, and but I mean, it was a crazy. It worked out, but it was crazy.
But
One
that
of
was
the
such
things
a
I
great Frank.
really liked in the book were just some of the little things about Sinatra. Like, for example, his drinking discipline. Everybody knows Frank loved to have a drink. He was a swinger. But who knew that he actually had approached drinking on a long evening in a disciplined way?
Yeah, for the most part, that was true.
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part.
There were some times he deviated, and when he did, there was all hell to pay. But he would go with 1 ounce an hour, and
1 ounce an hour.
that's right, on the rocks, 3 ice cubes, 4 ice cubes, every hour, and everybody was getting drunk around him, and he'd get up and walk to the elevator or to the room, and no problem.
But, of course, he couldn't handle gin.
No.
No, you knew if he
That was a war zone.
The gin wasn't good.
At one
Go ahead,
point-
Jennifer.
At one point, we were writing a story about when they were on the Concorde, and I happened to just ad lib in the story that they were drinking Dom Perignon because that's what they served on the Concorde. Eliot calls me the next day. He's like, "What the fuck?" He's like, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "Dom Perignon?" He said, "Sinatra had never had Dom Perignon in his life. Martinis were when we were celebrating." You know, that was it. You know, the rest of the time it was Jack, right?
Right.
That was.
Merrill Klein, whom we know, you know,
Merrill Callum.
Callum, excuse me, Merrill Callum was security, and then he was Frank Jr. security. Sentence leaped off the page at me when Sinatra's on stage or someplace, and Merrill says to you, "That's really a nice gun that he's got tonight." Sinatra was always packing a pistol on stage, for the most part. You think?
You know what? I've had a lot of conversations with Willie Rizzo and Joey Rizzo and Merrill, and they were around him much more than I was in in the beginning years until I went to work officially with him, and it seems that more times than not he had a pistol.
And how about the submachine gun?
Oh, you mean the Uzi?
Yeah, there was. Yeah. I knew that was a setup, man. I knew that was it. Go ahead. Yeah, I meant the Uzi. I meant Tommy gun.
That was a gift from Golda Meir, who repaid him for delivering the money to the waterfront in the 7-Day War, and he took great pride in showing special people what that was and why he got it.
But of course, the problem was it would be on the plane, private plane, flying into a.
Listen, that was all part of the excitement. You never knew when you were going to go. You were going to jail.
Part of the excitement. The last couple of years of Frank's life, those of us who, I mean, I wasn't on the inner circle, but we were close and loved Frank. We were aware that at times he was having memory problems, retention problems, and you maintain, interestingly, this is the first I've heard this, that you think it's because he had been taking antidepressant medicine, Elavil, for a very long time, and you maintain that essentially it was that medicine that was giving him the mental problems.
Well, by the time I realized there was a problem, which was 4 years in to me working with him, which was 1981, 82, when I got out and went back out on the road. He was already on this for 10 years. If you read the instructions, disclaimers, everything that could go wrong with taking this drug for too long, what it does to your memory, your hearing, your eyesight. All three of these things, okay.
But you couldn't get him off of it.
Well,
what it would take.
I did. I had it set up for him to go to Houston, okay. And I think with Dr. DeBakey, who was was a friend. He gave us a whole floor and told us, bring the guys down there and keep them company, and we could take him out to dinner as long as he didn't drink. And he signed on for it. He was going to do it. And this was in the early 90s. And Barbara did her own research and felt that this was not a good idea, because as you come off one antidepressant and go on another, based on her research, she was afraid that he could turn violent.
Yeah, violent.
And she just squashed the whole thing. But the bottom line is I'll tell you how sure I am.
I agree with that.
Was that the last two shows he did in the United States, Dr. Piquillon, which was his doctor from Palm Springs, was with us. I says, Doc, let's take him off the medicine for a couple of days. I says, we can't hurt him. He says, absolutely not. And we opened the arena in St. Louis, and then the next night we opened the arena in Chicago. We have tapes of those two shows. He never looked at the monitors.
Yeah.
He never missed a lyric, a beat. They were two of the best shows that I ever saw.
There is, I think Frank will forgive us, but there is one funny element of the time that he was drinking the gin, taking the Ellaville, and went into the men's room. The story, that story, it does have a good punch. It's in the book. It has a great punchline. You got to tell that.
Well, you got to tell the whole story.
Yeah.
I mean, we were somewhere
Oh, but the lies is the dog.
with the dog in Scandinavia.
Scandinavia.
And, you know, I woke up in the morning and I got 60 people on the road, the 3 aircraft, and I'm trying to stay ahead of him all the time. And I get a call from the front desk that the cops are here and they want to see Liza Minnelli's manager and a manager of the tour. Well, the guy says they only have to go to one room. Send them to me. And the guy says, you know, you have a dog here. You can't do that. You have to put the dog in quarantine for 3 months, and we want to take the dog. I says, you take this dog, there's going to be a war. I says, because if you take this dog, I have to wake up Mr. Sinatra. And if I tell Mr. Sinatra Liza's going to lose her dog, you're going to have a hotel that's going to have some holes in the wall. So my suggestion is you and I work this thing out and how we get this dog out of the country. And he says to me, what do you mean? I says, well, I got 3 jets here. I take one of my road managers, and we'll fly the dog to France. And we're going to show up in 2 weeks. I'll put the dog in a hotel in France. And make sure he has 2 or 3 meals a
Why
day
not?
and gets walked.
Makes sense.
And, okay, we worked it out. I got the dog out of the country. And I said to Liza, I says, Liza, when we go to dinner tonight, the last thing you could do is tell the boss what happened with the cops, with how we got the dog out. Forget it. Just don't mention a word. And we go to dinner, and he started out with Jack and a little red wine. And he said to everybody, everybody have a nice day today. It was a day off. I said, yeah, I had a wonderful day today. And he goes to Liza. She says, Frank, you can't believe it. The son of a bitch just wanted to take my dog. If it wasn't for Eliot, okay, they would have taken my dog. And he looked at me. He says, the cops were here and you didn't wake me up? I says, no. He says, why not? I says, because I didn't feel like going to jail today. So he switched from the Jack Daniels to gin, and I looked at Jilly, and Jilly looked at me, and we knew we were going to have a tough night, which we wound up in the lounge, and the piano player was terrible. And he never disrespected musicians, but he was a little bit gone. And he says, listen, tell the guy, give him 500 and tell him to go home. I can't stand. He says, the guy can't hit he says, I can't sit here. So I said, well, you know, he's only got 21 minutes and he's through for the night. So he says, listen, I have to go to the men's room. Okay, so I looked at Jilly, and Jilly came with me, and we went to the men's room, and we walked into the men's room. He's standing in front of the urinal, and someone comes in behind him, and he goes like this. He says, what the fuck are you doing in my bathroom? I thought he was in his suite.
At the hotel.
And Jilly says to the guy, thank God Jilly was there. So Jilly says, don't worry about it. He had one too many maybe, and he pushed him out, and he says, we'll let you in about 2-3 minutes. And Sinatra walked out, and we let the guy in. But, I mean, he turned around. He says to the guy, what are you doing in my bathroom?
You know, Eliot, you write glowingly about the internal qualities, I think, of Frank Sinatra had, beyond the vocal, the great vocal ability, the musicianship, his authenticity. What do you think are some of the reasons that Sinatra so attracted men and women? Some of the things about him, the internal qualities beyond the musicianship, that made him who he was?
Well, he was the champion of the underdog. He hated bigots. He was a champion of the underdog. And there was nobody that was in trouble that he knew that he wouldn't go to help. And I don't know many people like that. You know, I'm about to turn 80, and I don't know a lot of people that I ever met. If he was your friend, you didn't need anybody else.
Yeah, it was very good to me.
Right.
Very,
Like you.
very good to
Thank
me.
you.
To me, Sinatra, in many ways, was like the quintessentially confident man. That he exuded a confidence. And you also write about his seemingly, I wrote it down, a person who did not experience fear like a normal human being.
Well, that's true. You know, I was with him in some peculiar spots. We were in Italy, and I think it was Verona, and we had a concert that he sang the whole thing in the rain. He couldn't wait to get back to the plane, and he was soaking wet, and he says, you know, tell Johnny Spots, that's the pilot, you know, let's go, you know. And I heard him crank up the left engine, and it turned over, and I heard the right engine, son of a gun wouldn't turn over. And the boss was getting changed, and Johnny looked at me and I looked at him, and we didn't have to say anything. I knew we had a problem. And he said to me, listen, I'm going to try and get maintenance to ground here to see if we can get that engine fixed. Old man says to him, how many engines we got on this one? He says, we got 2. Well, we only got an hour to go. Get one engine going, let's get the hell out of here. Well, you know, most of the things I went along with, and it didn't bother me, but that didn't sound right to me. So, anyway, make a long story short, he says, listen, I don't care how long it takes. He says, I got a lot of Jack Daniels here. I'm not getting off this plane. So you guys figure out how we're getting back to Nice. And what they did is they came and they jump-started the engine, but Spots said to me, who was the pilot, Johnny Spots, he said, hey, listen, if I lose that thing in the air, I don't know if I'm going to be able to restart it. So I told that to the boss. He says, that's okay. Once we're in the air, one engine, 40 minutes, no problem. And we took off, we went. Thank God we didn't lose the engine, but he was fearless. The only time...
The Typhoon. Tell me.
Oh, yeah. That's what we were on tour with Stephen Eady. Yeah, we were coming out of Australia, and we were headed to Japan, and there was a typhoon in the area, and I got to tell you something. Everybody was on the floor. It was Kirk Kerkorian's plane.
In the plane.
Right. It was Kirk Kerkorian 727, which had a little lounge and cocktail area there, and he's sitting there with his jacket on, and he had a tie on. Stephen Eady, Judy, myself, Maria, we're on some part of the plane. We felt the safest place was the floor. And he's sitting there, and about 3 hours after we flew out of this thing, and it got all calm, I got up and I walked in there, and he says, where's everybody? I said, well, what's the problem? I says, didn't you feel what was going on? He says, not really. He says, not really. The only time I ever thought that he had some fear in him, when he was about to sing the first note on duets.
Duets, yeah. He
when
just didn't feel
no, it was
comfortable
10.
in that studio.
It was, well, he was a very smart man. He was 10 years since he was into a studio, and he didn't want to leave anything behind at this particular point that would
Yeah.
be a damage to his career. And he didn't really believe Hank and Phil Ramone and myself with all the little toys they had in the studio, not to worry about it. And I made a deal that if he didn't like the finished master, there was no deal, and he had no financial liability. And Koppelman, who was absolutely wonderful, okay, just encouraged me to keep going, don't worry about it. And but he was scared. But once he got through the first night, he did 7 sides in one night,
Yeah.
and then decided to take the next night off because he said it was July 4th, and everybody goes to the beach on July 4th.
That's brilliant.
And you know, I really believe to this day that if that paragraph wasn't in that will, okay, that estate would not be settled as of today.
We'll still be dealing with it now. This has been an incredible evening. The way it was, my life with Frank Sinatra, Eliot Weisman, Jennifer Valoppi. There's so many more stories in here, so stay up all night and read it.
Well, I just like to thank everybody at the Friars Club, Bruce. Okay, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you,
And
man.
thank you, Jennifer, as always. Okay, and everybody that came here. I hope you had a good time and enjoyed yourself.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.